Hello, everybody. It's John Pollock and Wai Ting. It's a special free edition of the G1 Climax podcast following day 15 with an A-block show from Sendai. And we are going to be playing the popular game of G1 Math, followed by G1 Scenarios on today's show. How are you, Wai?
Doing all right, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. Is this your free voice? You're not going to give away all of your inflections and reactions?
This is the free voice. This is my paid voice. I used to talk like this on all the Patreon shows.
Okay,
I'll use my free voice today.
Yes. Put the other one behind the paywall. That will be returning tomorrow on the wellness policy. So pay to hear Wai Ting's exclusive voice.
Well, you pay to hear the wellness policy live Thursday at 1 o'clock if you want to join us, of course. And breaking news here, Dan the Mouth Lawransky will be joining me and Jordan to talk about music.
On the wellness policy, wow.
On the wellness policy. I'm very excited. Late edition.
Is this Dan Lawransky on video?
Could be. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really ask him, actually. So it might be audio only. But in either case, that show will be on the cafe for patrons again at Thursday at 1 o'clock, but then free for everybody. So I'll change my voice somehow between the live show and the public one. Wow.
Well, that's I look forward to hearing you. So tune into that if you're a patron, live at 1 p.m. with Wai, Jordan Goodman, and special guest Dan the Mouth Lawransky. I will be back on Thursday for a solo G1 show, and it should be fun. It's a B-block show, and we'll be kicking it the old school G1 podcast where I would just talk to myself, argue with myself, come up with points that I would disagree with by the end of the show. Should be a lot of fun.
I look forward to hearing it.
Let's start off. Are you down to chat a couple of news items first, Wai?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we are going to start off with the announcement of the Friday Night Fright.
Fright? Really? Who came up with that? You?
Oh, it's huge. The Friday Night Fright. It's daunting to be looking at how much we have to watch on Friday night. It's also a fight, and thus it is a fright.
Daunting and fight. Okay. Friday Night Fright. I'll let you handle mentioning that one.
Still a work in progress. I'm disappointed that no side has branded this evening of 30 minutes of head-to-head, but we now have, in addition, we talked about this yesterday, Tony Khan adding the 1 hour buy-in that they're going to do on YouTube from 9 to 10 against a portion of SmackDown. And now we know the two matches. Bobby Fish versus Lee Moriarty is going to happen on Friday night, accompanied by Bryan Danielson against Minoru Suzuki.
This was some late-breaking news on a Tuesday evening that seemingly, at least, among wrestling Twitter, maybe at least our demographic, seemed to really break the internet. It was definitely an unexpected announcement. I think when we all found out that, okay, Tony Khan was going to put on this buy-in, set up matches, prelude matches for Bryan Danielson and Bobby Fish ahead of their match on Dynamite. I said it on our show yesterday, maybe the reason why Tony Khan's not, putting it out there is because it's probably not going to be any sort of major league significant opponent. Certainly can't be a bigger match than Bobby Fish versus Bryan Danielson. And then a few hours later, there you go. Just kind of sliding it in there. Tony Khan in his tweet saying, "Oh, by the way, you're getting Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki on the pre-show to Rampage on YouTube." So, what do you think of the decision, John?
So it's noteworthy the fact that the biggest match that AEW has for, I would say, either night is going to be on the YouTube portion, and that's you could certainly debate that that is a match that if you announce was going to start Rampage would be I would think be a significant match to start off with. Now, selfishly, I think if you're a fan, you are not going to have any concern about a lack of time for these two, entrances being cut off, which was an issue for Minoru Suzuki, and commercial breaks are not going to be a factor. So from the fan experience, I think this is how you would want Danielson and Suzuki if you are going to get it on a couple of days' notice. And I know some people are instantly going, oh, such hot-shotting. I was like, this match was never happening. They were not holding back for this match at a later date. This is one that, yes, absolutely reactionary to what has been, they are tasked with facing on Friday. But this is Tony Khan playing fantasy booker with the enormous wealth of options he has at his disposal to put together a match that is... The match is the story. That is it. It's the novelty of seeing these two. Second match they have ever had, but those that saw the first, it's probably a relatively small number from, I think, 2004.
Oh, I feel at least in Danielson's case, I mean, a very different wrestler today, and I'm sure Suzuki as well. You know, so I think it'd pretty much be a very different match, even if you did see it initially. But I definitely think that Tony Khan is taking this perhaps a lot more seriously than even I thought, you know, despite perhaps that tweet that he sent out there. And a shot like this is definitely a big move to tell us how much he looks at this as an important night for his company, in terms of bragging rights. So, you know, the question is whether or not this is truly a hot shot. And because if this match did not take place at this time, was there another scenario where it could take place? And for, you know, a Minoru Suzuki, he's a big deal to a lot of us. I don't think he's a big deal to your average person watching TBS or TNT. That's a matchup that will garner a lot of headlines among, you know, the hardcore wrestling fan base. And certainly it's bigger than anything that, you know, has been announced on Rampage. But I also think it goes to show you how much Tony Khan doesn't like to change up the card once he's announced it, because he very well could have, you know, switched the place of one of the matches on Rampage to put onto this show instead of, having Suzuki versus Bryan on the show. But yeah, it's ultimately to the benefit of the fan. And also, like, we don't know how long Suzuki is going to be in the city, or in the country, I mean. You know, full gear. Like, everybody wanted, what is it, Moxley versus Suzuki for All In. For some reason, that didn't work out. And, you know, instead they saved it for the Cincinnati match. Now, you know, is there another point where you could have had Suzuki do this? I don't know. I don't exactly know what his schedule is.
Like, he's got a few more dates for, like, 2 more weeks here. Like, you can't imagine, regardless, if you were going to do another Suzuki match in AEW, it wasn't going to be this long built-up thing. It was going to be a snap announcement of a match. Like, that's pretty much all you can do with a Minoru Suzuki on a limited schedule here in the U.S. I would certainly push back if they decided, well, Friday night, we're doing Omega and Hangman Page. Yes, that would be 1,000% hot-shotting, where you have built for something, and now you're just cashing in now for this one-night thing. Instead, they are, what can we do? We're not even gonna upset our Rampage card, which I think you could have done, but obviously he wanted to stick to that. Like, this is all bonus, and I really don't believe we would have been seeing this match if not for this unique scenario on Friday night where Tony Khan felt the need to add this buy-in. And I think if you listen to Tony Khan, who was doing media at Barstool yesterday, that I think he has a much more measured expectation of Friday, that they are not necessarily expected to win. I mean, he has certainly come off the idea of, we're going to beat SmackDown, to, I know that we have the better show. And that seems almost like he's leaning into that side, that regardless of numbers, I think his fan base is going to be very satisfied with Friday's presentation, even though the cable numbers may very well fall in WWE's favor.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a different tone from what you heard of, at least via Twitter, of, I would say, more the Impact Wrestling commercial type of Tony Khan. But even
the different tone.
A different tone, yes. But even within this interview, he he didn't shy away from kind of talking shit about the Raw, the quality of Raw from the night prior, calling it something to the effect of like
it sucks.
Did you see that go home show, or like, deliberately kind of talking about the competition. And I think ultimately, again, it's a game. It's a way to try to attract more attention to Rampage, which is the ultimate goal of Tony Khan's at the moment. I think, now with much more tempered expectation of perhaps what the result will be. And again, ultimately, the idea is to get more people watching wrestling on a Friday. And I feel like both companies are doing a good job of assuring that this week.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes it interesting to see, if we get a breakdown of SmackDown, like when this match starts on YouTube, is there any decrease of the SmackDown audience that is flipping over, that is maybe watching with two screens, for instance? I mean, it's very hard when you're getting into comparisons of a show on cable versus an hour on YouTube, because most are going to just look at how does Rampage perform from 10 till 11 versus SmackDown from 8 till 10:30. And if we get that 30-minute breakdown of SmackDown of how the sides fared in those 30 minutes with one another, if the buy-in helps get your fan that maybe was going to watch SmackDown and now they're going to tune out after an hour or just watch AEW because they're giving you 2 hours instead of one.
It's an interesting question. Yeah. How much of the audience that would be interested in a Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki match were planning on watching SmackDown to begin with? Because my suspicion is that, that overlap might not be as big as many may think. I think at this point, like, if you're somebody who cares enough about Minoru Suzuki, you're probably not watching that much of SmackDown anyway. So, as far as like how big of a dent goes, I think both will take a dent, but I don't think it'll necessarily be from each other. Like, what else is the competition that night, John? What time does the baseball start?
Baseball. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why SmackDown's on FS1 is because of the game that's on Fox. I don't know the start time off the top of my head. Maybe I can pull that up as we are looking here. But yeah, that's going to be key. And as we will get into these
8:07 is
so there
game.
You go. It'll be against the entirety of both episodes.
Yeah. So if anything's going to take a dent, it's going to be from baseball, and probably not from Minoru Suzuki being on SmackDown. Being on the Rampage show. But I think it's also a network game. Like, we've been looking at baseball just on cable. This is going to be that much larger of a baseball audience. You don't have NFL on top of it, but nonetheless, this will be a wider viewed game than what we've seen on FS1 and ESPN in theory. Yeah. And again, so much of this comes down to what the spin is going to be on the Monday when these numbers come out. Are people going to be comparing what SmackDown on FS1 does as a whole, or are they strictly going to look at this half an hour of overlap to see, who actually wins and who doesn't? But ultimately, this is all really just, I think, a game for bragging rights for the next week. Really, like who is going to be the talk of the Twitter? And even if WWE might win the rating, AEW can surely, I would say, rely on the fact that they could probably claim that they had maybe the best match of the night. But also, we haven't seen Sasha versus Becky. That could potentially be a great match too, provided if they, are able to deliver a satisfying conclusion. But it's just, again, it's all just a neat kind of like bonus in the schedule for a big wrestling night, I would say.
So Raw from Monday night, they went up against Monday Night Football and two baseball games. So this was significant sports competition, and Raw got hit 15% in viewership, falling to 1,582,000 viewers on the lower end of this year, their lowest since July 5th, and dropping 19% in the demo from a 0.52 to a 0.42 this week. Significantly hit in men 18 to 49, that fell 25%. Although one area was women 12 to 34, that was up this week by 20%. What really hurt Raw was that they started off terrible in the first hour. They grew in hour 2 and kind of subsided in hour 3. The audience did drop in hour 3. It was the lowest of the 3 hours, but the demo was just behind hour 2, but ahead of hour 1. So it seemed that there was, there wasn't even like the big spike at the beginning of Raw. They kind of had to work out of a ditch to begin with on this show. So, I mean, this is somewhat similar to what we saw on Friday night, where I think you can look at this number, and this is not one that I would be sounding the alarm over. This has proven to be a significant handicap for wrestling programming going against the Major League Baseball playoffs, and on top of that, Monday Night Football. But a decrease nonetheless in several key areas for Raw that I guess, the Usos spending their night off was not enough to convince people to stay for the full 3 hours.
Do you think for me, what's been significant about these few weeks has been the very shortened match lengths of several of the matches, including, the tournament matches. And do you think that will change once baseball competition is over? And football competition, I mean.
I think that it's something that we've seen enough of a variance that it seems that WWE just dips into and out of this kind of idea of match presentations that I don't know if just I'm sure it's playing some kind of factor that they are actively counter-programming, coming up with their angles before the football game starts, that we have seen, that there is certainly a response level to that. But I don't know if the match lengths are necessarily a direct response to that. It seems like that is, especially we're seeing on Raw this week, NXT, it's been pretty consistent since the rebrand of shorter matches. And I think their view of trying to appeal to a younger audience that they believe maybe has a shorter attention span. And I don't know if that is necessarily bared out as they have seen. But I see this going kind of, there are weeks where I think we will see the lengthier matches, and then there's weeks like this where they're just going to have quick, get as many people on. And I don't know if you saw NXT on Tuesday, but they were starting where it was angle, next person coming out for the match. It was just constant of not letting you have any breathing room, as they're just trying to have a fast-paced show.
Yeah, I started watching NXT, have not finished it. Do you have any thoughts?
It was, a show that I think it's still a big transition that you're watching, where it's still introducing a lot of new names. They do have a focus with this Halloween Havoc show, so they have confirmed it'll be Tommaso Ciampa and Braun Breaker, because Ciampa beat Joe Gacy, who it looks like they're linking him up with a Parker Boudreaux, who now has the name of Harland.
Okay.
Harland, yes.
Yeah. A nice and then WWE name that nobody else has. Sure.
Yes, Harland was
one
free.
Name? No last name?
Harland, yes. Harland.
First name Har, last name Land. Okay.
That's it. And then Halloween Havoc will also have a spin the wheel, make the deal match with Raquel defending against Mandy Rose, and a triple threat for the tag titles where Io Shirai and Zoe Stark defend against Gigi Dolan and JC Jane and Indy Hartwell and her best friend Persha Perota.
Yes. Yeah, my favorite actress.
Takeover this will not be. Although I think Ciampa and Braun Breaker will have some, that is the most, I guess, noteworthy match that they have promoted in this 2.0 era.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, I'll be watching that one with interest because it's such a big spot for Braun Breaker and really maybe, significant matches for really everybody up and down the card. But I think it just, will continue. The most sobering thing will be when they actually brand a show a takeover, and the quality will be, I'm assuming, drastically different from the takeovers of old. So, it's still a transitioning product. Yeah,
the two other things was they did do a tag match with Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner against Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland. And as you can expect, the stuff with O'Reilly and Dunne was pretty good. It was just limited. And the focus was Von Wagner. This match was very much about him. And he got the big comeback spot and pinning Ridge Holland. So I guess they're getting his losses taken out, because in theory, next week should be, or I guess next week would be his last week, because the roster changes go into effect next Friday, and I don't know if we'll see Ridge beyond next week, if we even see him here. He took the fall to Von Wagner, so that may as well be as much as you're going to get out of Ridge Holland on the way out here, and that begs the question where Pete Dunne goes on NXT Solo. Grayson Waller is now a Golden Gloves boxer, as he noted that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder know who I am, as he did a promo wearing boxing gloves, so that's great. Someone watched the fight on Saturday and came up with an idea here. And then the main event, I actually like the way they did this, where they promoted Swerve Scott against Santos Escobar, and they had a nice match. This was certainly on the higher end scale of NXT matches of late. And he pins Escobar with the JML driver. And instead, it's Carmelo Hayes who is out ringside to assist. And he's got his contract from the breakout tournament that they treat like Money in the Bank, where he uses the contract to beat Swerve Scott. So they swerved you in Swerve Scott's exit for the North American Championship. So they got the title off him, but in a different way than probably most assumed, where Santos Escobar lost instead of winning the title.
Very much in line, I would say, with main roster style booking. All the way down to this kind of Money in the Bank rehearsal. I think it adds some maybe added interest to this. What did he win? This breakout tournament deal. Mm-hmm. If he could have cashed in here, why didn't he cash in on Ciampa? If he could do this.
Well, he's got he really wants to control North America. You know what I mean? Like the world is a little daunting. He's still young in his career. He's breaking out, and you start with a continent, and then you move on to the world. So
okay,
and saw his opportunity here. So that was NXT 2.0.
Were you surprised? I mean, have you gotten any update about whether or not the half hour on Friday will be commercial free? Because they didn't mention that on the show, did they?
They did not. I didn't hear that. I asked someone who told me that they're under the impression it will be, but that they hadn't officially been told that. This is someone at WWE. So I guess they're under the impression it will be, but I guess they have not been told that with 100% confirmation yet.
Okay, yeah, interesting.
And they have not advertised it, which you think they would have between Raw and NXT. Like all the ads, it's just pushing the supersized aspect of it and not noting the commercial free portion.
At least watching what little I did of NXT yesterday and seeing the commercials, they didn't even advertise the extra half hour on the commercial, did they? Did you see that?
I know on the Raw ones, I wasn't paying super close attention to it, but all the ads that I had seen, it did have like the logo with supersized written on it.
But what does that mean? Supersized doesn't necessarily mean an extra. Like if you weren't following the online.
Oh, you mean like directly saying 8 till 10:30? Yeah, right. I certainly feel, especially Raw on Monday, I thought there would be a much larger push for SmackDown. That it's, number one, just alerting people it's on FS1. You take for granted that people are going to know that on Friday.
Do you think that could be a USA thing?
Well,
but they have done it in the past, have they not?
I remember when the switch first happened and they started SmackDown on Fox with Raw on USA. And I specifically asked about that and was told that it was, listen, both sides know what the game is. Like, we have shows on both sides, and there's going to be promotion. I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to hamper WWE from being able to plug a big SmackDown on Fox. And
is FS1 potentially different because of cable?
I just think, like, for 1 week, it's like that's your part. It is your partner.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that being a sticking point on the side of USA for 1 week for something that is big for one of our partners to promote this.
It's just a little unusual, that for such a I don't know, like a different type of strategy to promote a show that
it goes both ways. And I mean, this has been reported on WWE. It's like they have to promote their big shows every month on a NBC Universal streaming service and use Fox to promote that. So, I mean, it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that is all of our news to get to as we get into the G1. And at the end of this, do you have some top matches to predict or to share at the end of this?
I do. Yes, I do.
All right. We will get to that. So today's show is our second in a row in Sendai at the Xebio Arena with Kevin Kelly on commentary. Attendance today was 1,303, so an improvement over Tuesday's card with the B block. And I also went through the attendances. So after 15 days of the tournament, we have, I'll get to this at the end, but the A block is ahead of the B block if you want to look at actual attendance figures. We started with Hiromu Takahashi and Kosei Fujita, a lot similar to the Oiwa match the day prior, where it was Hiromu lighting this dude up with chops and just playing the superior throughout. Fujita got an inside cradle that Hiromu escaped, beat him down with more chops, and then a deep Boston Crab, pulling him away from the rope just as he did Oiwa, and Fujita taps in 7 minutes and 48 seconds.
Didn't get a chance to watch it. How was it?
This was more so a showcase of Hiromu to just be kind of your veteran junior heavyweight presence that can play subtle bully. And I liked him in this role in both nights, more so this one with Fujita. This was just a different showcase of Hiromu that I thought worked, gave him, some just a different showcase of Hiromu.
Okay.
Kota Ibushi versus Satoshi Kojima. This is not a tournament match, as this would have been Ibushi and Naito, so that would have been a huge match on this card. And these two had a pretty nice match together. Kojima hit a DDT on the apron, and Ibushi just lay there and rolled with a giant drop to the floor. And you just heard this thump in this empty arena of Ibushi's body falling onto the floor. Kojima used a brainbuster, and then Ibushi fires back with a lariat, and Kojima hits his own lariat, and Ibushi sells it tremendously, just dropping down. He ducks, hits Kojima with a half-and-half suplex, a knee strike, and Kamigoye for the victory in 14 minutes and 56 seconds.
I thought a really strong effort from both guys, it's sort of like silver lining of this Naito injury is the fact that we get some pretty fresh matches with guys like a Satoshi Kojima who are taking these opportunities very seriously. He really tries in these. And I thought this match was a better match than the Moxley match that we saw him in at All Out. However, in the context of the G1, I can't really say the match grabbed me in any significant way because we have seen so much better already in the tournament. And I wouldn't say this was necessarily a memorable match in Ibushi's G1 run, but really solid in terms of action and intensity. I went large, one cream.
I went large, one milk, one sugar on this one. I thought they had it was a nice match to start. I think it was, you could see Kojima wanted to work at a big level here. I thought it was, I agree with a lot of what you stated. Yujiro against Tomohiro Ishii. So Yujiro's out and Ishii is out as well with 8 points. So they're just kind of fighting here for points. Yujiro attacks him before the bell and uses the walking stick on Ishii and would drop him with a fisherman buster. And this began Ishii holding on to his neck. Lots of selling from Ishii, which is always a good thing for a match. And the scariest spot of this match sees Yujiro lift this guy up for a buckle bomb, but he comes up short and Ishii just crashes into the corner, coming down. This looked horrifying.
It was one of the sloppiest buckle bombs I've ever seen.
Oh,
it was very scary.
Just terrible. He didn't have enough to get him in there, so he just dumps him and could have done God knows what to this guy. I hated this. It was terrible. Just really awful looking.
Really terrible. I don't think Yujiro should be in the G1 anyway, but when it's something, man, and this, I don't think he ever he doesn't really injure people. I don't think he has that track record or reputation at all. So this is probably just an anomaly.
This is very sloppy. Very, very sloppy.
But nonetheless, this coupled with just the fact that he's by far, to me, the weakest person in the G1. And I don't really want to see him in next year.
He hits the Miami Shine, gets a near fall. Ishii recovers, hits a headbutt to the skull. Great. Yujiro hits his own brainbuster after countering Ishii's, and he kicks out of Pimp Juice. And then Ishii blocks Big Juice and fires at Yujiro like a ram. Yujiro staggers up from a German suplex, kicks out of a lariat before falling to the vertical drop brainbuster, and Ishii wins in 17 minutes. I really wanted to dislike this because I just was so upset watching that buckle bomb and just hating this. They did have a really strong end to this match. I would say that this was probably Yujiro's, buckle bomb aside, best match that he had of the G1. But God, I hated that spot. And I echo everything you said about Yujiro. He's dragged down this block tremendously for me. And he's done this every year. I think that to look at the tradition that New Japan has, where we have this golden rule of no junior heavyweight in the G1, and we rarely will go outside of our roster to protect the integrity of this G1 because a spot has to be designated for Yujiro. It's like, get out of here. I hope this is our end of the Yujiro G1 experience because I've lived through too many of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought they, scripted some nice near falls and no selling at the end, but the vast majority of this match I just thought was really shitty, it's basically a case where in order to get to the nice close, you had to bear with like these 10 plus minutes of slow, boring, low effort Yujiro offense that even Ishii's amazing selling couldn't save for me. And, I thought Ishii's comeback and the rush towards the finish was well done, but typically an Ishii match in the G1 is guaranteed to at least be like a large or above, but I couldn't even go large on this one. So medium, one cream, one sugar, one sleeve.
Damn, putting Yujiro in his place here. I can't be so dismissive. I did give this large with a milk and a sleeve, but it kicked the sugar out of me with that buckle bomb screw up. But then it takes us to this. The reenactment of The Lord of the Rings. Not any specific movie. All of them is what this match felt like. They did the too sweet at the beginning, so they're on the same page. Tanga Loa he's like the
match is Kenta versus Tanga Loa, by the way.
Sorry, Kenta and Tanga Loa. So we have Tanga Loa as the guy that is part of the Bullet Club, but he's also someone that he understands that his teammates are assholes, and he has to reconcile that with his own ethics.
And Kenta is still very much alive in the G1 here. He is amongst sort of like the traffic jam, heading towards the top spot. So,
but has to win here.
His chances are still very much alive, where Tanga Loa is straight out. So, you figure, oh, okay, like, could this be a case of simply a Bullet Club member giving another Bullet Club member their points to keep their faction alive? Oh, it's never that easy, is it?
No, that does make logical sense here. Tanga Loa has no prayer of winning. Kenta does. That's where it ends. Kenta used the Green Killer, double stomp off the top, and then he splashes Tanga Loa into the referee in the corner. And Tanga Loa tells Kenta, face me like a man because you've been acting like a bitch all match. So Kenta decides, well, I'm going to forearm you in the dick. And that's what Kenta does. He then kicks the rope into Jotto's balls. And he has, I guess, taken the testicles away from both men for the remainder of this match. And then Kenta decides, you know what this match needs? A kendo stick. So he brings out the kendo stick, which Kevin Kelly notes he has prevented himself from using all tournament long. It's like this is his cheat day in Sendai. He goes for the stick, but then when the referee is coming back to, Kenta does the Eddie Guerrero spot, going down and pretends like Giotto has hit him, thinking logically that this would lead to anything, and the referee's like, well, Giotto did this. Whether it was in the ring or not, I was out. I can't do anything here, Kenta. So Loa hits a Loa blow to Kenta, grabs the kendo stick. There's an inside cradle that gets blocked. They run him into the buckle. Kenta then slips off the shoulders and rolls up Tanga Loa, grabbing the rope for leverage, and he pins his partner, Tanga Loa. How long do you think this match went?
Well, I'm looking at the time.
Oh, okay.
So then I know how long it went.
Dude, somebody sat down and said, they went through this whole card, and they said Kenta and Tanga Loa, third match on the show, 22 minutes and 13 seconds. Yes, that sounds about right for these two.
It was very unfortunate, and if there's anything perhaps, we talked about the silver lining of maybe getting some very interesting replacements for Tetsuya Naito. Maybe some of the repercussion is the fact that we have to give more time to matches that don't deserve it, like this one on these cards, because this certainly did not have enough substance to go north of 20 minutes. Didn't even have enough substance to go 12, I would say.
12 is where I would have capped it.
This was a match that, felt as gimmick-ridden at times as a Yano match, which probably means it should have stayed a Yano match length instead of going 22 minutes. I thought there were some, compelling moments of Kenta trying to outgame Loa, but certainly not enough to maintain the interest, and certainly not enough action to maintain the interest. So it really dragged for me. I went below average, certainly, for this one. Medium 1 cream.
This was a medium coffee from the hotel lobby.
Ooh, like from a Keurig, maybe.
Yeah,
not even a Keurig, like a knockoff brand.
Yeah, this is and you go and they told you that the coffee's actually brewing. It'll be about 20 minutes before it's ready, so you have to wait on top of it, and it's not great coffee.
You have to pay for it.
Skip this match. Avoid this match. Zack Sabre Jr. against Toru Yano. So Zack has 10 points, so he's very much in the mix. Toru Yano has 8 points. So even if he won, though, he's lost.
A tiebreaker.
He's lost to Kota, so it's kind of irrelevant for Toru Yano here. So we have these last three.
He's out.
Toru Yano's out. He can play spoiler. Yeah. Zack applies a choke on Toru Yano as he is being introduced in the ring. So Yano's still got his jacket and his sash on. He escapes a Cobra twist and retreats to the floor. Yano takes Zack to the backstage area. Once they are in the back, that is when the count begins. Toru Yano emerges by himself, returns to the ring, when Zack stumbles out with a blindfold on. He is lost. How do I get back to the ring? And then suddenly it dawned on Zack, wait a minute, there is nothing stopping me from taking this off my head. And he did, and thus he could see. It is one of the shortcomings of this blindfold gimmick. There is a very easy defense to it.
Well, it's more about, I suppose, beyond the blindfold, how is he chained to the back? Ultimately, yes, there's a way for him to escape beyond the 20 seconds.
We might not have seen Yano deliver a concussion to Zack backstage, and thus he is out of his element, not being able to go to this immediate answer of, I'm blindfolded. I'm going to take this off. So He removed it, returned to the ring in time, and gets caught in an armbar. But Zack quickly counters to apply his own armbar, and then the handcuffs are brought into the match. They end up fighting, and the two are handcuffed to each other's wrist. And they are on the floor, and they begrudgingly must work together to get back and break the count, or else they're both fucked. Now, if Toru Yano was a real asshole, he would not cooperate here because his staying on the floor would prevent Zack from getting his points and ruin his tournament. But Toru Yano doesn't think that way. He wants the win. And they roll back in at the count of 19. Zack gets a triangle with handcuffs on.
Mm-hmm.
Try that.
Dude, it would help. Are you kidding me? You never lose the wrist. Okada would love to be in a handcuff match, I'm sure.
It's true. That is something that should be maybe explored at a future tournament. Maybe Naga can introduce this, like handcuffed jiu-jitsu matches.
That would be very interesting. You would certainly get a lot more activity. I know we're joking here, but I'd be very interested, okay? For how many jiu-jitsu matches have you seen where they just refuse to engage? Or I guess you might get a lot of just laying in guard, but yeah, at least you wouldn't get
I would watch it.
stalemate.
I would 100% watch it out of curiosity. But he gets the triangle, and Yano has the key, but he can't unlock it in time and has to give up in 6 minutes and 43 seconds. I did not go double XO on this, but this was great. I enjoyed this a lot, okay? That's for all the people who think I'm all dull and boring and I don't like anything out of the norm. This was great fun, and it was the perfect length.
I totally agree. I mean, my big question going into this is that would this match interrupt Zack's streak of standout G1 performances? And the answer was no. Even within the context of a Yano comedy match, I thought you had a highlight of a performance from both of these guys. It was certainly one of the better Yano matches in the tournament. Maybe
I'd say second, behind the Ibushi match. This would be number 2 for me.
Okay, yeah. I thought it had strong comedic energy from the very start. It had a good sense of urgency from both men that was well maintained throughout the entire time of it. But of course, it all comes down to the main gimmick of the match and how clever and how creative it was. And I thought this one was very original and very sensical. Yano does his cuffing gimmick, almost in every match. And all would have worked out fine if he managed to cuff Zack onto the rail. But in MMA, John, what's your best strategy against an expert grappler? It's to keep your distance, not letting him get a hold of you. Zack used his disadvantage to his advantage by cuffing Yano onto him, and that was the beginning of the end. He could not escape the grasp of the best submission wrestler in all of professional wrestling, and put him into a Kimura right on the outside, and then back in the ring. It was like multiple pinfalls before the triangle, and then the armbar tap out. I thought it was very sensical, and it was creative, and it was short. Everything you could ask for in a Yano match.
Large and a milk for me on this one. I'll throw in a sugar too. It was sweet.
Large, 1 cream, 1 sugar from me as well, which is probably the top end of my Yano scoring.
Yeah. In going through all my rankings, Yano did not perform too well in the overall average of my ratings. But it's
impossible for this style of match to go XL. Like unless he somehow like puts in more physical effort and like gets the shit beat out of him. Like it doesn't go that high.
The main event was Shingo Takagi and the Great Okan, both men with 10 points, and thus both very much alive in all of this. And Takagi's got the left side of his rib cage taped up. And what I liked about this was the first half of the match, it was not so much the Great Okan attacking the ribs, but rather Takagi being handicapped by this injury, because so much it affects everything when you've got a rib injury to sell. And Takagi was great at selling these ribs, that any offense he wants to get off has a toll it plays on the state of his health. So that was great. And then the midway point, that's when Okan starts to attack the ribs. And they had many different flurries of strikes with one another. And Okan goes after the rib area, and he dumps him onto the top rope, ribs first. He just bounces off. Takagi comes back with a Made in Japan. The Eliminator gets stopped. They run the ropes, and it culminates with Great Okan hitting a lariat that forced Kevin Kelly to scream out, "Oh, what a goddamn clothesline!" Which, for this day forward, that will be the name of the Great Okan lariat, the goddamn clothesline.
Goddamn. Yeah, Kevin Kelly should throw goddamn in there more often. Why not?
Every now and then, you throw in a goddamn.
Everybody in wrestling is saying bitch and shit. Come on, let's just, dial it back a little. There's nothing like a good goddamn.
Yeah. Religion, it's there. A nicely timed Jesus Christ has a time and a place.
Sure, sometimes, yeah.
And then Takagi has his big comeback with a pumping bomber and a Last of the Dragon to win this one in 25 minutes and 51 seconds. I enjoyed this a lot. I have not enjoyed Great Okan consistently throughout this tournament. He's had his moments, but I thought these main events that he has been thrust into, mainly because of the Naito situation, I think has put him into this spot. I think that he's had some really nice matches in these main event settings, and I thought that this was a very strong match that these two had to finish off the night.
He definitely did, yeah. It's interesting looking at Okan's record. Starting
he had a hot start, and then he fell apart.
Well, starting in this G1, yeah, like he was booked to go 3 straight wins, and then with the Naito victory attached to his record as well early on, I mean, he really felt like a frontrunner for half of this tournament. But the quality of those opponents was also the worst. I mean, he started off in a match with Tanga Loa, and then Toru Yano, and then Yujiro Takahashi. But from that point on, once he started losing, he also started to have really great matches, including like a Zack Sabre Jr. here, then Ishii, Ibushi, and now Shingo Takagi. All of these matches were very good. So I agree with you. He's really kind of come alive. Unlike the previous 2 matches, or at least maybe some of the more the matches that maybe where he relied upon his amateur background a bit more, I felt like there was a lot more of his theatrical side coming through with a lot of the crazy looking strikes and Mongolian chops and kung fu punches and whatnot, but it was coupled with the stiff striking that you would expect from a Shingo match. So I thought a really versatile performance from him. And as usual, a very hard fought, good match from Shingo, going 25 minutes. Very long, but I thought the pace was pretty well kept and the aggression was pretty well kept. So I went XL for it.
Yeah, this one goes XL for me as well. I would highly recommend the last two matches for different reasons, but they were enjoyable. Skip Kenta and Tanga Loa like the plague. Yujiro and Ishii, strong ending to it. I enjoyed Ibushi and Kojima, and Hiromu and Kosei Fujita. You're not going to go wrong with that combination for an 8-minute opener. So as a whole, I thought this was a pretty good show. But look at it like there was the usual 15-minute intermission, and they gave you another 22 minutes and 13 seconds that you could tack onto that intermission if necessary.
Sure, yeah. Bit of a longer intermission than usual.
So after today's show, we have one more A-Block match, and that's the big show on Monday at Yokohama Budokan.
One more A-Block show.
A-Block show, yes. Kenta, Kota Ibushi, Shingo Takagi, and Zack Sabre Jr. are all tied with 12 points. So are you ready for some scenarios, Wai?
Yeah. So it's a 4-way tie, right?
4-way tie. So Kota Ibushi, he wins the block as long as so the matches on Monday will see Kota Ibushi against Kenta, Tomohiro Ishii against Toru Yano, Shingo Takagi against Yujiro, and Zack Sabre Jr. against Tanga Loa. And I mean, if we go by what that article that had gone out about Ibushi and Kenta, the block coming down to those two, there seems like a pretty good chance that that's what it comes down to at the end.
I think no doubt Ibushi and Kenta will be the main event. I mean, just looking at the card, because
I think it has to. It's the only one where it's two people that are alive facing one another. The others are, I'm sure we'll see some spoilers or just tiebreakers ruling out, especially Zack. Zack could win, but actually, anyway.
I just don't think Ishii and Shingo and Yujiro are going to headline, nor Zack Sabre Jr. versus Tanga Loa. So by far the biggest match, even without, taking the scoring into account, is Kota Ibushi versus Kenta. So it'll come down to that. Yeah.
So if Ibushi beats Kenta, the only thing that could prevent that is Zack. So Zack also has to lose because Zack would have a tiebreaker over Ibushi. For Shingo to win, he has to beat Yujiro, and then both Kota and Zack Sabre Jr. have to lose. Kenta can win if he beats Ibushi and Shingo Takagi loses to Yujiro, which does not seem likely. Zack can win if he beats Tanga Loa and Kenta loses in the main event because Kenta would have the tiebreaker over Zack. My prediction is that Zack is going to get beat by Tanga Loa in an upset. Shingo beats Yujiro. Ishii and Yano, it doesn't matter. And then I see Ibushi beating Kenta and Ibushi wins the block. That's my prediction.
I agree. I think Tanga Loa can upset Zack Sabre Jr., so it takes him out of it. Shingo Takagi beats Yujiro, which leaves Shingo alive, but also...
But it means that Kenta... For Takagi to win...
Kenta must beat Ibushi, which I don't think will happen.
Yes.
So I think Kota Ibushi will win.
There you go. That is Monday's show. And... the attendance I mentioned before. So throughout the G1, they've averaged 1,363 people per show. That's 1,620 for the A block shows, 1,069 for the B block shows. That you wonder if, you look at this and did the A block get hurt even more not having those big Naito matches throughout the tournament as well? Like there were some big ones to have with Takagi, with Kota Ibushi. But nonetheless, the A block, it looked better on paper, and the attendance has reflected that, outdrawing the B block shows by about 600 people almost.
Yeah. I mean, it's a weak year for the G1, unfortunately. I don't know business-wise how they would necessarily assess it, but do you feel like they could have done better given the circumstance?
I think that I don't think the I don't think they could have done much different that would have resulted in larger crowds. For just fan appeal, I think you could have put in one or two outsiders. I think you also could have looked at, I think the idea with Hiromu is we have to come back with this. We have to do best of the Super Juniors. And, people are just going to say without any thought, oh, put him in both. Like, I am not putting that guy in back-to-back tournaments with his history of health problems and knowing the level that he is going to want to perform at. And I think you have to pick one or the other. We do have another tour to think about. But selfishly, his involvement in this G1 would have been really novel to have a lot of Hiromu matches. But this is what they went with. It was a down year, I think, in interest level. But as we get into the matches, this is not the volume of incredible matches we've had in years past. You still have gotten some pretty outstanding matches on the whole, especially your upper echelon ones. So I don't think this has been a diminished year when it comes to great matches. We just don't have as many of them. And looking ahead to the potential for next year, certainly I think people have to look at next year. If things are settled and you have this AEW alliance and things are opened up, who knows what the G1 could look like next year?
Just New Japan America, being as fruitful as it has been on this side of the world. I mean, never mind the talents that are typically a part of New Japan, but like all the people that are, affiliated with New Japan Strong, but not necessarily, involved in the Japan side of things as well. I really hope next year we get involvement from everybody.
If you get Danielson in the G1 next year, that will be transformative for New Japan World. People talk about that. I just don't know if I see AEW letting him go for a month plus to do a tournament. Like when Moxley was doing it, that was before TV.
Before TV, yeah. So I just don't really see a whole tournament for.
It comes down to what AEW is open to, and you have to imagine though when they were negotiating that subject came up. Like, we know Danielson's desire to do New Japan. Now, he has also mentioned the idea of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go there and quarantine for whatever it is, 10 to 14 days. Is he willing at this stage of his life to leave his home for 5 weeks to do a G1? Like, that might not be, he might want to do New Japan. G1 is a different commitment. He may not want to do an entire G1. He may want to do, I'll go over there for some big shows, but not an entire tour.
Yeah, I mean, he still seems somebody to me who still has very much of a commitment to his home life. As much as I think he's wrestling Minoru Suzuki on a Friday, as much as I think, he wants to get wild with his wrestling side of things. I mean, a whole month away from family is a different level of commitment with two very young children at home, and not to mention the risk of injury, although everybody in these tournaments is very professional, but it's a lot of wear and tear on a person's body. So I don't really see it, but can he show up for the occasional, like on the final for a big match or Wrestle Kingdom? I definitely think that's possible. Over at postwrestling.com/G1, of course, we have our results of the day from the G1 Climax 31 contest, courtesy, as always, of Chris Engler. And in the G1 listener contest standings, still sitting atop, Zack Smith at 61 points. RVD311 in second place with 58 points, cutting the lead a little bit closer, only 3 points behind. And then following the two of them is a two-way tie for third with I Fight Giant and Mario P, both at 57 points. So actually still a very close race here, closer than it was in the days prior. In the Daily Perfect Club, a lot of you guys chose the show completely perfectly. There were no underdogs here, as even 54% of you accurately predicted that Kota Ibushi would beat Tetsuya Naito. In the Post Wrestling C Block standings, still atop with a 4 out of 5 card today, Kate from Montreal at 53 points, really pulling away with the lead here. Brad the Archivist, also with a 4 out of 5 today, stands in second place at 50 points. And then Randobot, unfortunately only doing 1 out of 5 today, yet that was still good enough to nab Randobot a third place ranking. followed by Mark Buckledy at 45 points, Mike Murray at 44 points, and then now tied for last place, Eric Marcotte, and unfortunately the C Block queen herself, Vivian Murray. So we'll see if Vivian and Eric, out of the two, who can compete to get out of the very bottom.
Well, before we sign off, we have constructed our top matches of the G1 thus far going into the last couple of days. So I have actually ranked every single match. I am not going to go through all of them. How
do you rank something like basically like in the 70 range? Like how do you rank how do you know like 50 is above 51?
I have no scientific formula for any of this. This is totally gut and feel, where after each show, I would just, like from day one, I put, okay, what were the top 5 matches of the day, and put them in order. Then the next day, I add to the list and add to them and add to them. And it's all, I'm just trying to remember all of these specific matches. And I just go, was this around here or this? Like, this is not, I don't have some ranking system where I can break this down by this. This was a 7.6.
Are you actually writing all of your like coffee ratings? Because you were pretty out there with some of your coffee ratings.
No, I didn't even try to keep track of the coffee rankings. It's just a list of the matches.
Got it. Okay. Well, do you want me to go first?
Sure, if you want to.
I actually have a top 6. It's just kind of the way they worked out. But
okay.
My number 6 match of the tournament thus far is from day 9 in Shingo Takagi versus Kota Ibushi. And then I go to day 2 for Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kazuchika Okada. Then we go to day 13 for Kenta versus Zack Sabre Jr., a match I really enjoyed. Day 1, Shingo Takagi versus Tomohiro Ishii, which I'm assuming might top a lot of people's list. And then we go back to day 9 and Zack Sabre Jr. versus Tomohiro Ishii. But my favorite match of the tournament thus far, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Shingo Takagi. I think you guys can see who I'm probably choosing for my MVP of the G1.
All right. I did a top 10 here. So going in ascending order, number 10 was Zack Sabre Jr. and Kota Ibushi from day 5 in Kobe. Number 9 was Kota Ibushi and Tomohiro Ishii at Ota Ward Gymnasium. Number 8, Zack Sabre Jr. over Tetsuya Naito on the opening night in Osaka. Number 6, Tomohiro Ishii against Zack Sabre Jr. Sorry, that was number 7, is Tomohiro Ishii and Zack Sabre Jr. Number 6, Kenta versus Zack Sabre Jr. from Osaka on day 13. Number 5, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Shingo Takagi. I think you are seeing a pattern here. That was day 3 at Ota Ward. Number 4, Kazuchika Okada and Sonata teasing the time limit. And that was from day 10 at Korakuen Hall. Number 3, Okada Tanahashi from the second night in Osaka. Number 2, Kota Ibushi, Shingo Takagi, day 9 in Nagoya. And number 1 is still from day 1 with Takagi and Ishii in Osaka. And I have 5 Zack Sabre Jr. matches in my top 10. So he is the leader on my wrestler of the tournament listings so far with several days to go.
He is mine as well. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, there you go. We are now done 15 days of the G1. I will be back tomorrow to go through the B block, which features Kazuchika Okada against Tama Tonga, Evil against Jeff Cobb, Hiroshi Tanahashi against Yoshihashi, Sonata versus Goto, Taichi versus Chase Owens, and then our non-tournament tag, Hiromu and Bushi against Ryohei Oiwa and Kosei Fujita. So the key matches there are Okada and Tama Tonga for Okada to stay undefeated, and Evil and Jeff Cobb, where a loss by Evil would eliminate him. So we will find out tomorrow if Okada and Cobb will stay undefeated going into their match next Wednesday for the B block final, or if someone is going to incur a loss along the way.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting as we play out scenarios. We kind of ran through the B block scenarios on yesterday's show, so if you want to check that out, join the Post Wrestling Cafe.
All right. So that's going to do it for us. We hope you enjoyed this free edition of the G1 podcast. If you want to jump on board the Post Wrestling Cafe, we will have a show out Thursday. We will also have a show out Monday, next Wednesday, and then we will be doing a free show Thursday evening next week, going through the final of the G1 as well as Crown Jewel. We're going to lump all of that together because it's a packed day of wrestling with pretty much the shows running back to back with the G1 final followed by the Crown Jewel event at noon next Thursday.
Thursday, yes.
All right. So there you go. That is it for us. Tune into the Wellness Policy once again, live Thursday, 1 Eastern for all patrons. Dan Lebransky joining Wai Ting and Jordan Goodman to chat about music.
Yeah, I'm so excited about the chat. So yeah, tune in if you're a patron. And if you're not, listen to the show Friday.
And that is it for us. Go check out postwrestling.com, leave us some feedback, and we'll speak with you tomorrow with more G1 coverage.